There is a moment inside the Elimination Chamber that takes less time than it takes you to register what you're watching. Cody Rhodes has just hit a crossroads on Drew McIntyre, following the RKO. The reigning undisputed WWE champion is down. The interference is gone. By every rule of narrative logic, by every law of shared history, shared sacrifice, shared survival, what should happen next is that the two last men standing look at each other and settle this properly. But Randy Orton doesn't wait for what should happen next. The RKO lands before Cody has fully risen. The cover follows immediately. 1, 2, 3. The United Center erupts. The crowd is on its feet, and Randy Orton rises from the canvas, looking somewhere between satisfied and hollow. He looks done, like a biological transaction completed, and Cody Rhodes sits on the chamber steps, staring at nothing. The expression on his face is not the expression of a man who lost a match. It is the expression of a man who recognized something he had been told wasn't there anymore. I watched all of it live, and as Orton stood there, 45 years old, titanium hardware fused to his spine, standing in the wreckage of what he'd just done, I found myself asking the same question that has shadowed every chapter of this career. Can a person actually change? Because there are two versions of this story. One version says Randy Orton spent years becoming a better human being, and that RKO was simply the competitor in him seizing the only moment that mattered. The other version says the better human being was always a facade, and what we saw in Chicago was just the mask slipping. Every mythology has a version of this figure: the reformed monster, the warlord who laid down his sword, the wolf who learned to sit by the fire. And every mythology tells you the same thing about what happens next. The fire doesn't change what the wolf is, it only delays what the wolf does. So in order to answer that question, we have to go back, way back, before the championships, before the comeback, before the Viper, before the surgeries. We have to go back to the very beginning, because Randy Orton didn't become who he is by accident. He was made. Every men are shaped by their choices, but Randy Orton was already shaped before he ever got a chance to make one. Randy Orton was born into professional wrestling the way some people are born into debt. His grandfather, Bob Orton Sr., was a journeyman. His father, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., was a main event player in the Territory era, a WWE Hall of Famer whose name still carries weight. By the time Randy was old enough to understand what his father did for a living, the industry had already shaped how he understood everything. What toughness looked like, what respect looked like, what men did and did not talk about. He has said, plainly and without deflection, that his father was a terrible role model. The anger, the volatility, the instinct to perform dominance rather than earn it, that was the inheritance, handed down right alongside the genetics and the bloodline and the name, a psychological blueprint that was already cracked before he ever set foot in a ring. By the time Randy Orton understood who he was, he had already been built by someone else's unfinished war. That blueprint followed him into the United States Marine Corps in 1998. He was 18 years old. The military is exactly the kind of institution you join when you believe discipline is supposed to come from outside yourself rather than from within. It didn't go well. He went AWOL twice. 82 days the first time, operating under the genuinely remarkable internal logic that the military would simply process his absence as a resignation. They did not. When he finally boarded a Greyhound back to base, his commanding officer told him to pick up his rifle and return to duty. He sat down in a chair and refused to move. He was court-martialed. He served 38 days in a military prison at Camp Pendleton and received a bad conduct discharge. Years later, fans online would call it a dishonorable discharge. Orton would get visibly irritated correcting them. Bad conduct discharge, not dishonorable. Fact check next time, you D-bag. The distinction mattered to him, which means the discharge still mattered to him, which means some part of that 18-year-old who sat in that chair never fully left. With every other door closed, Randy had no choice but to go back to his father. His father called WWE.
And I think what happened is I gave the military a shot, and that didn't go too well. And
then talk about that.
Yeah, and then the working midnights at the gas station, that wasn't really that wasn't as much fun as I thought it would be.
No
So
way.
I was
No way.
legitimate. I'm 19 and I'm like, hey, Dad, what do you think?
Yeah.
Could you give somebody a call? Could I give this wrestling thing?
Vince McMahon, upon hearing the backstory, said no. It was Jim Ross, the most respected talent evaluator in the history of the industry, who went to bat for him. Ross told McMahon, everyone deserves a second chance, and this kid's ceiling is too high to hand to a rival company. WWE relented. Randy Orton had his shot. He came up through developmental alongside the next generation of the industry's biggest names, then arrived on the main roster, fast-tracked into Evolution, the most powerful stable in WWE at the time, built around Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista. The idea was that Evolution existed to pass something down, the torch, the knowledge, the standard. And instead of that humbling him, it armored him. He was protected by the best in the business, which meant he could do almost anything and face no consequences. So he did almost anything. He destroyed property.
And he had his hands around the urinal, and he yanked the entire urinal out of the wall. And I thought, I don't know if I got what it takes.
Shot fireworks at colleagues from the window of a moving vehicle.
And we're in the car, and all of a sudden Randy decides to start shooting fireworks at us. And let me just say, that was one of the scariest moments of my life.
Mocked the veterans. Harassed writers so systematically that one made it a personal policy to never shake his hand. John Cena, the ultimate professional, took one look at young Randy Orton. The company protected him every single time, because talent this rare comes with a price tag the institution was willing to pay. Ric Flair called him the best in-ring performer he had ever seen, then immediately added that Randy needed to be motivated. Triple H was more pointed. The only person who was ever going to stop Randy Orton was Randy Orton. That he was a self-destructor, that he didn't take advantage of the tools he had. That is a devastating thing to say about someone. Triple H was probably right. By 2006, the company hit a breaking point. A SmackDown taping, backstage, Orton caught smoking marijuana. WWE had just introduced its wellness policy in the wake of Eddie Guerrero's death, and the industry was under a level of scrutiny it hadn't faced in years. The drug test was the surface. The documented pattern of verbal abuse against colleagues and staff was the substance. WWE handed down a 60-day suspension and mandated 4 weeks of inpatient anger management in Atlanta, $15,000 out of pocket. He arrived planning to complete the program and leave. Something cracked instead. For the first time, he started to recognize the reputation he had built from the inside. Later that same year, he overdosed on sleeping pills, primarily Ambien, and had to be rushed to a hospital. His first wife, Samantha, found him unconscious and saved his life. WWE kept it quiet. The industry kept it quiet. This near-death experience existed as a whispered thing for years before being confirmed in his own documentary. He was 26 years old, the youngest world champion in WWE history, and he was nearly gone. But here's the thing about men who survive the versions of themselves they were never supposed to become. They don't always know what to do with the survival. They carry it like a debt they can't name, owed to someone they can't find. Randy Orton walked out of that hospital and kept going. The question this whole story turns on is whether walking out changed anything, or whether it just meant the wreckage had more time to accumulate. WWE looked at the overdose, the suspensions, the hazing, the anger management clinic. They looked at all of it and thought, this is content. The Signature Pharmacy steroid scandal broke in 2007. Sports Illustrated linked 14 WWE employees to illegal drug purchases. 10 wrestlers were suspended. Randy Orton's name was explicitly in the investigation. No suspension followed. WWE cited double jeopardy. He'd already been suspended in 2006. Records showed he kept receiving packages after that. It still didn't result in discipline. By 2012, he was on his second official wellness policy strike. Marijuana and Dianabol. One more, and the policy mandated termination. Rather than risk losing their investment, WWE quietly amended the policy to allow a strike to be erased after 18 months of clean tests. The wrestling world called it the Randy Orton rule. That is what institutions do when a person's commercial value exceeds the cost of their behavior. They build architecture around the person rather than asking the person to change. WWE did not want Randy Orton to become a better human being. They wanted Randy Orton on their television. And for over a decade, those two things pulled in opposite directions, and the institution consistently chose the television. In 2009, they put a fictional therapist and a legal team alongside Orton in the ring.
Something else is a part of me. It's called IED. It is a mental condition where the individual, when sufficiently provoked, suffers a loss of control, resulting in outbursts of physical violence.
Intermittent explosive disorder, IED. They cited real DSM criteria, real Mayo Clinic statistics. They pathologized his actual behavior, handed it back to him as a gimmick, and he ran with it. His character's defense was that WWE had known about his condition for years and chosen to exploit it rather than treat it. In the context of everything we now know about how the company actually handled his real behavior, that promo is one of the most genuinely blurred lines between fiction and reality professional wrestling has ever produced. The in-ring character that emerged from this era, the Viper, the apex predator, demands honest examination. The Viper was not a creative team's invention. The Viper was permission. Every man carries a version of himself he has spent years keeping quiet. Most people never find out what that version is capable of. Randy Orton found out in front of 20,000 people a night, 300 nights a year. And the terrifying part, the part that made him must-watch television for half a decade, is that it never looked like performance. It simply looked like relief. Watch any match from 2009 to 2014 and pay attention to the pacing, where most wrestling of that era operated at speed, sequences accelerating toward crescendos, moves landing in rapid succession. Orton moved at something approaching geological. He would drop to the mat between moves and pound the canvas. He would stand over a prone opponent and simply look at them for a moment longer than was comfortable. When he locked in a headlock, it did not feel like a rest hold. It felt like something being extracted. He explained this directly. When a match runs at constant maximum velocity, the audience's nervous system habituates. What you get is noise, not drama. Slow the pace down, force the audience to sit in the discomfort of not knowing when the strike is coming, and the eventual explosion feels genuinely dangerous in a way that no sequence of big moves can replicate. The RKO functions entirely on this logic. Everything around it has been moving slowly, methodically. Nothing has happened quickly in several minutes. When Orton suddenly springs and the move lands in under a second, the speed is startling. It feels like an ambush. He coined the phrase "out of nowhere" until it became the move's second name. There is a specific moment from Breaking Point, 2009, that illustrates what this character actually was at its core. Orton had spent the better part of an I Quit match handcuffing John Cena to the ring post, working him over methodically with a kendo stick. At some point, Cena stopped responding. Orton stopped too. He picked up a water bottle from ringside and poured it over Cena's face. Not to stop, to revive him. An unconscious man cannot express his pain, so Orton needed Cena awake, fully present, capable of feeling every remaining second of what was coming. The act of reviving someone in order to hurt them further is not a wrestling move. It is something from a different genre entirely. The audience sat with that for a long, quiet moment before the match continued. That moment, the bottle, the water, the deliberate pause, is what the entire prime Randy Orton era was built on. The in-ring psychology was a mirror of something real. That slow, coiled, methodical stillness was what Randy Orton had spent years projecting externally while operating in complete internal chaos. The Viper on screen was cold and controlled. The person wearing the Viper's skin had a genuine short fuse, documented anger management issues, a history of explosive incidents, and a psychological interior that he described, during the height of that era, as frequently dark, gloomy, and haunting. The character was not the person. The character was the person's most dangerous impulse, refined to its purest expression, and safely caged inside the theatrical conventions of a wrestling ring. The Kofi Kingston incident in 2009 is where the seam tears in real time. Live television. Kingston missed a cue, got confused about a sequence. What followed had nothing to do with wrestling politics. It was personal. Orton, legitimately furious, abandoned the planned finish, delivered the stiffest-looking RKO of his career. As Kingston lay on the mat, Orton leaned over and screamed, "Stupid, stupid," in front of the entire arena. Then he went backstage and complained to management with enough force that Kingston's main event push was dead on arrival. One moment of real anger buried a decade of someone else's career. That's the cost of the Viper when it bleeds into reality. It doesn't just hurt Randy Orton. It hurts whoever is nearest to him when the cage door opens. There is a specific kind of damage that builds up when you live inside your worst impulses 300 days a year for decades. It doesn't make TMZ. It shows up as a short fuse in airports, as panic attacks in hotel rooms, as nights where you pace the backyard because you literally cannot lie down. Orton called that period his darkest.
My mind would start going, and then all of a sudden I'd get hot. I'd have to get out of bed, walking around our yard, just taking deep breaths.
He had everything the industry could offer: the championship runs, the recognition, the financial security, but the inside of his life was only darkness. The schedule alone is sufficient to hollow a person out. 300 days a year on the road, 4 or 5 days a month at home, a blended family that needs you, and a character that requires you to live inside cold, controlled aggression for the entertainment of millions, perpetually, without an off switch. Because the corporation that employs you has no interest in off switches. Using your own genuine psychological pain as fuel for a fictional character is not a sustainable practice. Ask Jake the Snake Roberts. Ask New Jack. It depletes something, and the more successfully you perform it, the more completely you destroy yourself. Orton was tapping, nightly, into a real reservoir of anger he had never learned to process any other way. The character required the darkness required the character. At some point, he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. His first marriage to Samantha Spino ended in 2013. He married Kim Kessler in 2015. From everything Randy Orton has said publicly in the years since, that marriage is the dividing line of his adult life. Kim arrived during the exact moment his career, his identity, and his physical body were all beginning to fracture all at once. She wasn't the mere witness of the collapse. She held the structure up while it was happening. And then, May 2022, the injury itself was the result of 20 years of Randy Orton being Randy Orton. The RKO requires him to leap horizontally, grab his opponent's neck, and take the full combined momentum of 2 human bodies onto his lower back. He has executed that move thousands of times. Each repetition transferred kinetic force directly into his lumbar spine. He also carries hypermobility in both shoulders, the condition that gave his movements that fluid, liquid quality coaches admired, while also making his joints chronically unstable. He dislocated his shoulder taking out the trash at his own house in 2015. Following a match on SmackDown, the structural degradation at L4 and L5 reached a catastrophic failure point. Neurosurgeons told him his career was probably over. One said directly, "This is not the type of surgery professional athletes come back from." They told him to think about being present for your children. Think about your life past wrestling. He broke down in tears. He said afterward,
And it was here's my identity. This is who I am. This is the one thing I know that I'm good at and I get respect for, and I can't do it anymore. And for 6 months, I was under the impression that that was it.
professional wrestling has a specific relationship with the body that no other performance art shares. It borrows against the future. Every bump, every fall, every 1,000 RKOs taken and given. And one day, the debt comes due. In a hospital room, in the form of an MRI and a neurosurgeon who doesn't know how to soften what he's looking at. The ring had taken everything Randy Orton has to give, and then it took the one thing he never agreed to give. It is profoundly devastating to witness the collapse of someone who built their entire existence around absolute calibrated power. For 15 years, he moved through the world as the apex predator, projecting an aura of untouchable dominance. But an MRI report doesn't care about the food chain. In a single morning, the predator was stripped of his teeth and claws, reduced to a man incapable of bearing the weight of his own frame. The apex predator was a creature of total environmental control. He chose when to strike, he chose the distance, he chose the moment. The Predator never got caught in the open, never showed his belly, never let anything close enough to cost him. And here he was, titanium in his spine, 40 pounds heavier, unable to strike, unable to sleep, unable to perform the one thing he had spent his entire life becoming, exposed in every direction, with no ring to retreat to, and no character to hide behind. Just a man. Which, for Randy Orton, may have been the most terrifying thing he had ever faced. He found a surgeon in Newport Beach who performed the fusion anteriorly, through the abdomen, not the back, to avoid cutting the muscle groups he would need to absorb impact ever again. Dissected like a frog, Orton said. The L4 and L5 vertebrae were fused with hardware, screws, rods, and the two became one fixed, permanent unit. He spent 18 months in rehabilitation. He packed 40 to 50 pounds of dense muscle onto his frame specifically to armor the repair. During those 18 months, severe clinical anxiety manifested as debilitating panic attacks, a phobia of flying, nights where the bedroom felt like a trap, mind racing through worst-case scenarios, body generating heat he couldn't control, the only relief found in slow circles in the dark while his family slept. He was prescribed SSRIs. He used them for years. He has said this plainly, without framing it as weakness or exception.
I didn't like the medication, but I kept taking it because I thought that, well, I need to take this because if I don't, I'm going to have panic attacks.
The medication held the floor for him when the floor would otherwise not have existed. But Kim held it before the medication could. When the old habits started coming back, the regression toward the toxic coping mechanisms of his earlier years, she saw it happening before he did, and she stopped it, decisively, with the specific competence of a person who loves someone enough to refuse to let them destroy themselves. He called her a badass. The word carries genuine weight in the way he deploys it, a statement of observable fact. He returned at Survivor Series in November 2023, unannounced, walking out as the final member of Cody Rhodes' War Games team, again in Chicago. The crowd response was the specific kind of eruption that arenas produce when they've been waiting for something without being certain it was coming. What followed over the next 2 years was a version of Randy Orton nobody in that locker room thought they'd ever see. He mentored Matt Riddle through a divorce, drawing on his own experience with the end of his first marriage. He told Javon Evans, one of the most electric young performers in the company, that he didn't need to do every dangerous thing he was capable of every single night. Every spectacular thing costs something. The bill arrives eventually. Orton knows it the way only someone who has done the math with their own body can know it. He paid his in the form of a double lumbar fusion, performed through his abdomen when he was 42 years old. He has also said, plainly and without defensiveness, that he was a dick back then, no qualifier. For a man who once did things like allegedly defecated a diva's handbag and ripping off urinals just for fun, that admission is itself an accomplishment. He said it directly, he meant it, and the locker room believed him. This is the man Cody Rhodes believed in. That matters. Because the debt between them runs deep enough that belief should have been bulletproof. A young Cody Rhodes drove Orton from town to town for 3 years during the worst stretch of his life, kept him functional when functioning was not guaranteed. Orton has said this publicly, with genuine emotion. If it wasn't for Cody, he might not be here. That's the man he RKO'd in Chicago. So we return to the Chamber. February 28th, 2026. Drew McIntyre hits Cody Rhodes with the championship belt. Cody goes down. Orton coils and RKO's McIntyre. Cody hits Crossroads on Drew. The interference is gone. The Chamber is down to 2. By every law of narrative logic, that is where this story settles. The 2 survivors. The reckoning the audience has been waiting for. But Orton does not wait. The RKO lands before Cody has fully risen. In under a second. The cover follows immediately. Orton exploiting an opening is, on its face, exactly what the apex predator has always done. The interesting thing is the speed. No hesitation. No visible conflict. 20 years of shared history. Legacy. The road. The debt that runs in both directions. And none of it registered on his face. 9 months before this, they sat across from each other on a tour bus in Los Angeles. Red, white, and blue lights. Wheatley vodka. Cameras rolling. And Cody said,
you're 100%. Nothing would have happened for me without you. Just, you took this chance on me. And
That same night, Randy was asked who he'd most want to face if he could choose anyone. He didn't blink.
Answer, I'd say you.
You. If I had to give an answer right now, it's you. Orton has told us time and time again, there is no wasted motion. Everything in that ring happens for a reason. He doesn't just throw himself around. Every single movement is a calculation, which means the RKO on Cody Rhodes was a calculation. People call it cold, but coldness is just a lack of feeling. To do what Randy Orton did, he had to process the entire weight of their 20-year history, acknowledge exactly what Cody meant to him, and strike him down anyway. That isn't coldness. That's something far more terrifying. Orton has spent a decade shedding his old skin, building a reconstructed man that the world and Cody Rhodes could trust. Las Vegas is where we find out if that new skin goes all the way to the bone, or if the blood of the Viper still runs cold. He turned 46 in 2026, double lumbar fusion. Roughly 60 matches a year now, compared to 200 at his peak. The reduction was born from necessity. What it accidentally produced was a better storyteller. Less output, more precision, a masterclass in patience from someone who learned the hard way that reckless spectacle has an expiration date. He has said, plainly, that he will not be the one who decides when it ends. That decision belongs to Kim. The day she tells him he is done is the day he walks away. No argument, no negotiation.
She told me, she goes, when it's time to hang him up, I'll let you know.
He has handed the final chapter of a 26-year career to the woman who kept him alive long enough to have one. He currently holds 14 world championships. Wrestlemania 42, Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium. Whether he faces Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, or both, the opponent is almost beside the point. The real question has never been about who stands across the ring. The real question is which Randy Orton shows up to face them. Most wrestlers pretend to be monsters when the lights come on. Randy Orton wrestled so the monster inside him could finally step into the light. And for a decade, the light suited it perfectly. That monster built 14 championships. It made arenas now has done something harder. He tells younger talent the surgical table has no favorites, that the pop isn't worth the neck, that the money disappears faster than the career. He quietly reaches out to fans, drowning in depression or being torn apart online. He talks about 2005 to 2007 without flinching and uses his own wreckage as a map so others don't have to find it themselves. His father handed him a cycle of anger and called it inheritance. Randy Orton looked at his 5 children and decided the cycle stopped with him. He built a life, a real one, with weight and roots, out of everything that nearly consumed him. Or the other one, the one who was never built, who simply always existed underneath every apology, every moment of growth, every carefully constructed act of becoming, waiting with the specific patience of something that has never needed to hurry. The chamber proved the access is still there, instantaneous, total. Randy Orton walks into that main event carrying both versions of himself. The devoted family man, and the thing that has been waiting in the dark since a 19-year-old sat in a chair at Camp Pendleton, finally ready to be unleashed. One of them is going to walk through that door in Las Vegas. So will the real Randy Orton finally stand up?
When I began my career, who's around now that was around then? Nobody. I am the one constant in the WWE. Every superstar that comes down that aisle eats at the table that I set for them. Because I don't paint my face and flail my arms like some kind of idiot. I compete all year round and don't just show up come springtime for Wrestlemania. Is that why you don't respect me? I didn't pay my dues in front of hundreds of people, and I paid my dues in front of millions and millions of people. I've won the world title 13 times. I have won them all on multiple occasions, but you still don't respect me. Can call me what you want. Apex predator,
Viper, you can even call me the legend killer, but the only thing you need to refer to me as is the 3 most destructive letters in sports entertainment, and that is RK.
Thanks for watching till the end. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Click the video on your screen on the right to see how WWE killed wrestling, and I'll see you next time.